Welcome back, students, to our third video for Modular 3. And we mentioned at the very beginning of this presentation in the first video about the generalist social worker. So we're going to spend the remaining slides talking about the generalist model. This will be the final video for Modular 3. So, the generalist model. This is a way of thinking about social work practice as kind of the baseline, or I guess you would describe it as sort of the fundamental skill sets and abilities that strong entry-level, again, generalist social worker would come with. So, the generalist social work practice consists of any helping situation imaginable. So this again crosses all types of clientele, whether again we're talking about individuals, couples, families, or organizations, and all sorts of different kinds of social work. It encompasses many areas and requires a wide range of knowledge to deal with the many situations and individuals that arise for a social worker. So again, it kind of goes back to that whole concept that I've talked about more than once, is that whole concept of the toolbox and being able to assess and understand that what the tools are that you're going to need to utilize in any particular situation. And the model incorporates a knowledge base. We've talked about the fact that social workers don't sort of operate without having a strong knowledge base, a set of values, and those come from the National Association of Social Workers, or the NASW Code of Ethics, and a skill-based that can be used with every type of client possible: individuals, couples, families, and organizations. And I think it's important to recognize that your skills as a social worker certainly do initiate at the academic level in terms of being in school and learning about social work. But social work is very much a forever learning occupation. So I mentioned before, social workers will be attending webinars and going to classes way into being a longtime veteran social worker. It's a always evolving, always changing field, and social workers are inherently the type of people that are always wanting to learn about new things and new ways of being able to do things. But I think it's also important to recognize that a lot of your skill set really comes on the job, that once you've been hired in a position and you're starting to work with clients, learn from your colleagues, learn from whoever is serving as your supervisor, all of those will contribute to increasing your knowledge and your skill set. So there are some pretty major components of what we consider under a generalist model, and they're listed here. And those include operating from a strengths perspective with clients, concepts around empowerment and resiliency, social and economic justice, which we've talked about before, and the social worker serving as a change agent who uses the helping process to facilitate change in a client or a client system. We're going to talk more about all four of those. The generalist practice social worker is trained to intervene with client systems at the individual, family, group, organization, or community level of the environment using the stages of the helping practice. Going back to, again, our ecological systems framework, we talked a little bit before about the fact that often clients are presenting, families may be presenting with challenges in terms of fitting, might be the term that they might use within a given environment. Again, taking into consideration that those environments would be identified as things like your workplace or your home environment or your school environment, and that there's just challenges that that individual or family is experiencing in terms of fit. And And so the role of social work is to promote, strengthen, and restore, if necessary, that positive fit. So by helping clients be able to strategize about, excuse me, about ways to be more successful within an environment, to promote their resiliency, to promote their flexibility and their ability to be able to implement change. All of those kinds of things come into play when you're talking about working with clients so that they can discover a better way to be able to fit within the environments that they're struggling within. That person in environment fit, PIE, remember we called it PI earlier, is the actual fit between the person or the group's needs, their rights, their goals, and their capacities, and the physical and social environment within which the person or the group operates. So again, it goes back to, and I can't emphasize this enough, that we're always operating in a way of being able to help the client or the family be able to fit more appropriately or operate more appropriately within a given environment. But we're also taking a look at ways that we can try to modify or change the environment so that it's more supportive of the family that's operating within it. I don't think we could let this moment go by without saying that the whole concept of Black Lives Matter and the whole idea that we as a country, that we are an environment that for over 200 years has not provided a very good fit for a significant piece of our population, and that's our African American population. And that what we're seeing now and what's happening now is this push to try to make our environment, meaning our country, accommodate its residents and its citizens, particularly African Americans, because for the longest time, the fit has not worked. And so that's an excellent example right now of taking a look at environment, fit, and the population. So what you're striving for, or what you can identify, is the fact that the fit of the environment may be favorable. Obviously, that would be preferable. It may be adequate, meaning it's meeting some of the client's needs, or it could be unfavorable, it's not meeting any of the client's needs. And when exchanges with the environment over time are inadequate, the individual's healthy development may be affected negatively, or the environment might be damaged. Again, something that we're seeing in terms of some of the activities that are happening within our country currently right now. Let's talk about the strengths perspective. I love this idea, and I think it's something that can be used across the boards, no matter what the client population is that you're talking about. So again, another component of the generalist social work practice. This is another tool in your toolbox. What you're doing is you're identifying an individual or a system's strengths. Those strengths are used to modify the environment with which that individual or system interacts to increase the level of person and environmental fit. Generalist practice requires knowledge of social work, including advocacy, to empower individuals to change their environment. That's why social justice issues are so important in terms of social work practice, because we're constantly either in the mix or we're helping to try to empower individuals to change their environment. From the strengths perspective, the client is considered the expert. They are the ones who are the most knowledgeable about what their needs are. The social worker builds on the strengths of the individual to facilitate their ability to change their environment or their coping mechanism to interact with it. So let's give you an example. So perhaps you have a client who comes in and has been experiencing severe depression, anxiety around the loss of a job. And as part of your assessment process, what you might do is probe a little bit with this particular client and be able to try to see if that client can identify, tell me about a time when maybe you felt as you feel today. Have there been other experiences or other times in your life when you've experienced something that has brought you to this same sort of emotional place? And the client might say, well, the way I feel today kind of reminds me about the way I felt 10 years ago when my first marriage ended in divorce. Okay. So we've identified now a set of circumstances and an experience that this client's had that resulted in having very similar kinds of feelings and anxiety that they report that they're experiencing right now. So you want to take the client back to that point in time 10 years before when they were feeling this way and begin to have conversations with them about the fact that do they recognize and do they see that the way they were feeling 10 years ago was something that eventually passed, and that they found a way to be able to move out of that depression and out of that sense of anxiety. And then to continue to have conversations with the client to help them identify, tell me about what you did that you felt contributed to you being able to move out of those feelings of hopelessness and dread and depression, and help them identify that that was something that they identified. They figured that part out. They were the ones that made that happen. Nobody did it for them. And that it resulted in a relief in terms of the depression and the anxiety. So the client knows all of this. It's just, I think most often what we're doing is we're just helping them put the pieces together. And what happens then is that you can start to help the client identify, these were the skills that you had. You were the one who accomplished this. You can do this again. How can we take what you learned from the experience that raised you out of that negative experience before, and how can we use those things now to be able to change the situation you find yourself in now? So that's an example of using a strengths perspective approach in terms of working with a client. And I can't emphasize enough that the client is really the one who's the expert here. They're the ones who eventually are going to have to move themselves from where they're at to where they want to be. And our job is never, ever to be the one who tells them what they should do. Our job is always to help them explore and identify and recognize that they have the ability to be able to make the change themselves. Now let's figure out where those tools and those skills are and how can you move yourself into that area. So that's really a perspective on the strengths perspective. Sorry. So we want to recognize that all individuals have strengths, that they are much more likely to grow and change when these strengths are identified rather than the deficiencies are emphasized. The thing that's amazing about the strengths perspective also is the more people use it, the more they're able to do that self-identification of what it was that resulted in them making the change in their life that they wanted to make and successfully accomplishing it. They can go back to that. That's an ever-filled well in terms of they can always go back to that again and again and again and be able to use those concepts and those ideas over and over. We want to be respecting clients' strengths. Again, social work practice is guided by an awareness of and respect for clients' positive attributes and abilities, talents, resources, desires, and aspirations, and that we want to recognize that clients have many strengths. They are often untapped and frequently unappreciated, but they can address physical, emotional, cognitive, and social and spiritual energies, resources, and competencies. Client's motivation is based on fostering client strengths. So helping a client identify their strengths is often quite motivating for a client. The social worker is a collaborator with the client. So again, like I said before, you're not the expert. You're not the person who's telling them what they should be doing. You're helping them to find a way to be able to get to identifying that for themselves. We want to avoid the victim mindset, emphasizing and orienting the work of helping use client strengths can help to avoid blaming the victim. And any environment is full of resources. So similar to the strengths perspective is also the concept of empowerment. This is a key aspect of the generalist social work practice. It's the process of increasing personal, interpersonal, or political power so individuals can take action to improve their life situation. Individuals whom social workers interact with are members of at-risk populations facing barriers in their environment which can limit their functioning. Rather than fixing problems, social workers can help clients see that they can create change. And people who are empowered can make change at the individual, family, group, neighborhood, organizational, community, state, national, or international level. So giving people an understanding that they have power, that there is power in groups, there's power in verbalizing and identifying what the deficits are that they're experiencing. There's power in being able to identify that you're not by yourself, and unfortunately that there may be more than one person who's experiencing a particular issue that maybe from a societal standpoint we're not addressing. And so all of that kind of contributes to the idea of empowerment, whether it's at the individual level or at the community level. Social and economic justice. We've touched base on this a little bit before. The ecological or systems framework absolutely uses and promotes social and economic justice. Social justice is defined as fairness and equity in regards to basic civil and human rights, protections, resources, and opportunities, and social benefits. I think it would be fair to say that we are in the midst of a number of different social justice issues. And if you've been on the planet for any length of time, you've seen tremendous things that have happened in terms of social justice for a variety of different populations, whether we're talking about LGBT folks and the right to marry, whether we're talking about Black Lives Matter again, whether we're talking about immigrant rights, whether we're talking about women's rights. All of those have been those social justice movements that have sort of grown out of the last 100 or more years to really kind of propel people forward and communities forward. And then economic justice. This is all about how resources are distributed at every level of the environment, who has access to those resources and opportunities, and how policies at all levels of society affect human development, shape social work practice and types and levels of intervention. So definitely along with social justice, you're taking a look at economic justice as well. Who has access to jobs? Who has access to resources? I mean, economic justice on the smallest scale is look at neighborhoods within your own community. Who has access to a grocery store that has fresh fruits and vegetables? Who has access to healthy places to be able to walk so that people are able to exercise? Who has safe and lead-free housing? And so you begin to see that where there are no grocery stores, where there are no safe housings, where there's no parks, where there's no walking spaces, those are often going to be in the same neighborhoods. And you're often going to be finding that you have folks who are poor and are really struggling economically that are the residents in those particular environments. And so that's really what economic justice is all about. So the last piece that was on the list on the previous slide is about the idea of the helping or plan changed process. You're going to hear this as both the helping process and the plan change process. So depending on what literature you're reading, you'll see these terms used interchangeably. So the plan change process is the process a social worker follows in order to determine and devise a plan to help a client with their individual needs. The plan change only happens when the client has recognized and agreed to participate in the efforts to make change. So this is a systematic process assembled by both the social worker and the client to be able to move them through the stages of change. The beginning generalist social work professional is seen as a change agent who can assist clients' systems in identifying needed change, develop strategies to make the changes with those client systems, empower and assist client systems to implement those strategies, and monitor and evaluate throughout the process to ensure that the desired change is happening. So the social worker is a partner, team player with the client in terms of moving these efforts forward. And it's, as I said before, it's very systematic, and there's a whole planning process to it that both the client as well as the social worker need to be actively involved in. So here's the first of the various stages of the helping process. It's called the dialogue stage. And here you're establishing a partnership with the individual client. There's issues of acceptance, respect, and trust. You're defining each other's roles. You're defining the purpose for working together. You're motivating the client for change. You're helping the client define the problem, and you're addressing what crisis needs might be happening. Sometimes there's a long-range problem that really you and the client agree that you want to work on, but maybe there are some things that are quite immediate, like lack of housing or other kinds of things that are going to prevent you from being able to successfully move through this change process. And so sometimes there's a need to address those issues before you can jump in and start working on the plan change process. The next stage is referred to as the discovery stage, exploring client strengths, examining resources, assessing capabilities within those resources, looking to identify goals and concrete objectives that you and the client want to work on together, really putting together an action plan and negotiating possibly a contract for change. There are surprisingly situations where a social worker and a client will actually put together a written agreement. It really very much details out things like how frequently you're going to meet, how long you're going to meet each time you meet, but it's also going to get into some details about this is what the client agrees to work towards accomplishing, this is what the social worker agrees to accomplish, this is the respective role of each of those individuals, and that's what really is in one of these contracts for change. Development stage, this is operationalize the plan of action, increase the experience of power within the client system, access resources necessary to achieve goals, create alliance among persons and organizations to accomplish the plan, and enhance opportunities and choices by creating additional resources. So this is really putting your plan into action. And this could be a period of several months, several weeks, years. It all depends on what you and the client have agreed to in terms of the length of the relationship. The engagement stage, again, continuing to develop the relationship, identifying goals, and then the contract stage, assessing and evaluating the strengths and needs of the client system, formulating the action plan, and determining what resources are needed. Action stage, carrying out the plan, and this also then includes termination and evaluation. So by moving through these stages with a client system, the social worker and the client address the following issues together. Who has the power? What does the client bring? What connections are working? What connections are not working? What connections are missing? How should things, I'm sorry, is this the way things should be? What would the client like to see changed? What connections can be used as resources? What about the big picture? How do all the pieces of the system fit together? So these are all of the different pieces that really the client system is looking at. So in conclusion, to summarize the ecological systems framework, this allows the social worker to deal with large amounts of information from many different areas and to bring order to that information. It includes concepts that are applicable to the full range of clients served by social workers, incorporates not only the structure of the social unit involved, but also the interrelatedness and interactions, shifts attention away from the characteristics of unit to the transaction and interactions between them. It's more about the relationship. Views individuals as active participants in their environments, capable of change and adaptation, including shifting to new environments. Incorporates the concept of client self-determination. We're going to talk more about that in upcoming modulars. Focuses social workers on the need to provide and maintain continuity. Provides a constant reminder of social workers, that change is healthy and necessary. Places both the social worker and the agency within the client's environment. Reminds social workers that since a change at one level of the system creates change at other levels, interventions must be thought through and chosen with care. So that concludes Modular 3. So now please proceed to working on the discussion board and eventually the quiz. Thanks very much. Have a good rest of your day.